Counting though.
Cost of life.
Hey Brett, can you tell us your story of being born and being moved and getting used to the new culture and settling there and then moving back to your homeland and then starting something new and then taking off and how have you come and future plan everything.
Okay, so so my name is Brett Halverson. I am Korean. I was born in Korea, and when I was 4 years old, I flew to America to receive my heart surgery. I was born with a heart disease, and at the age of 4, I was brought to New York and had my life-saving heart surgery there. Um, President Reagan and Mrs. Reagan had heard about the Gift of Life NGO out of New York, and this NGO they help children all around the world in developing countries born with heart disease. So at that time, 1983, I was 4 in 1983. At that time, Korea was still a developing country, and the doctors here were not able to do the surgery. So at that time, late 70s, from the 70s to 80s, Gift of Life had helped a lot of Korean children. So 1983, President Reagan and Mrs. Reagan had heard about Gift of Life, and there was a American woman that was living here in Seoul, and she was stationed here. Her husband was in the military, so she was living here for a very long time, and she was one of the people that helped a lot of these Korean kids go to America to different hospitals through different NGOs to get their life-saving heart surgery. So the Reagans came in '83 for a business trip, and the Gift of Life CEO knew that the Reagans were coming to Korea, but through the news. And so he wrote a letter to the White House and introducing their NGO and telling them, there was about maybe at that time 700 Korean children on a waiting list to come to the States for heart surgery.
Wow.
So he asked, "Can you please bring some children back to the States when you come back?" So Mrs. Reagan had saw the letter and she agreed to bring back 2 kids. So I was one of them, along with another Korean girl. So I flew on Air Force One with the Reagans to the U.S. and
Sorry. Like I totally need to interrupt. Like how did they pick two out of 600?
yeah. So actually, I don't know the whole story of how they chose who went, but the American woman that was running the organization here, I think she was the one that chose, and I don't know how she chose it. Chose me and the other girl. So yeah, so I was chosen, but eventually the other 700 kids got heart surgery. They just didn't go with the president.
Oh,
Yeah, so
wow.
eventually they did get help.
I thought it was a competition. I guess it was not. Other than
No, no,
they
no,
had to
no, no,
wait
no. So
longer.
it was just not a competition, but it's just being a fact of getting chosen to go with the president.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so 83 November 83, I fly to New York with the Reagans, and I received my heart surgery on Long Island. Um, and after the surgery, successful surgery, I came back to Korea, and then about 6 months later, I was adopted through a private adoption. So after the adoption, I had no, I, you know, I lost contact with my Korean family. I lost contact with the NGO Gift of Life. I lost contact with the Reagans, of course, and the American woman. And her name is Harriet Hodges, by the way. So I grew up. I was after the adoption, I grew up. I lived in Arizona for the few about 7 years for the first 7 years, and then we moved to Seattle area. So I grew up just a normal American life with my new white family, and and as you can imagine, at the age of 4 or 5, if you don't, you know, continually speak the language, you forget. So I completely forgot every Korean. I didn't even know how to say hello. Um, but anyway, so I grew up and yeah, just lived a normal, American life with my new family. And in 2004, so at that time, I'm working for an insurance company, an insurance brokerage. And 2004, I'm watching the news, I'm channel surfing, and I see that all the major broadcasts had the same news. So I stopped because something big happened. So I stopped to watch it, and President Reagan had passed away. So at that moment, I felt like, I started thinking about my past. And growing up, I never really asked my parents the details about my story. So the only thing I knew was the Reagan saved my life. I didn't know about the NGO. I had heard my mother, speak of Mrs. Hodges, the American woman living in Korea. So, but the only thing I knew was the President Reagan and his wife saved my life. So at that moment, after watching the news, I felt like I had to try to find Mrs. Reagan to thank her because, I knew that if I did not get the surgery, I would have died. So I started searching on Google, and at that time, my Google searching skills were not too good, and so I failed to find her. Needless to say, but so about 3 years, during 3 years, I always had it in the back of my mind, oh, I need to find her, I need to thank Mrs. Reagan, but I just didn't know how. So,
I don't think it's easy to find their contact just online, is it?
yeah, I mean, maybe these days because technology is has advanced so much. Maybe it's easier these days than back then. But so anyway, so 3 years later, I'm in my office and I'm thinking of I start to think about it again, and I remembered my Korean name. So I Google my Korean name and I find a New York Times news article
Wow.
back in
That's
1983 about
super
this.
cool. That's super cool.
Yeah, so I'm reading this article about how the story of the Reagans bringing me and the other girl to America, and then so I'm like totally shocked that there is some news about it,
I mean, like,
because I never
how did you
expected.
feel when you saw your name on the news?
I was shocked. Needless, yeah,
I would be too.
yeah. So and amazed and yeah, I don't really exactly remember my feeling at that time, but yeah, I was truly shocked. And so I'm reading the article and just really amazed, and then so after reading it, I'm thinking, oh, maybe the editor who wrote the article would know how to find Mrs. Reagan. So I called New York Times and asked if the editor was still working there, and the woman on the phone, she told me he retired a couple years ago. So I thanked her and hung up the phone, and I Google his name. And so I find a few uh, men's name with his name. I don't know if I can say John McQuiston. So there's a few John McQuistons listed, and I find one with a New York area code. So I find a few, but I just call the first one, and this man answers the phone, and I say, "Oh, hi, this is probably a strange phone call, but did you used to work? Did you used to work for New York Times?" And he's like, "Yes, I did." And I said,
Wow.
"Do you remember writing an article about the Reagans bringing two Korean kids for their heart surgeries?" And he's like, "Yeah, I remember that." And so I
Wow.
tell him, "Oh, I'm the boy that you wrote about, years
Wow.
ago." And he's like, "Oh, wow." So we small talk for a little bit, and then I tell him that I'm trying to find Mrs. Reagan. Do you know how to find her? And he says, "Unfortunately, I do not, but I know that they have the Reagan Library or Museum in California." So I Google that, and I call to the Reagan Library, and the secretary who answered the phone, I tell her who I am. I tell her what I'm trying to do, trying to find Miss Reagan to thank her, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, Mrs. Reagan, her office is here. She comes in like once every month or once every 2 months. I can't give you her, personal information, but I'll give you her personal assistant's email." So I thought, wow, this is kind of easy. so so before I hang up the phone, she asked me, "Do you know you're famous?" And I said, "No, what are you talking about?" And she's like, "In the museum here, there's a huge picture of you and Mrs. Reagan
Wow.
when you were a little boy, and it covers, one of the whole walls of the museum, and it's been here for years." And so,
Wow.
yeah, so I almost have a heart attack, and
Wow.
so yeah, it was really crazy, yeah, to
Wow.
learn about that. So I thank her, I hang up the phone, and I email the assistant and tell her who I am. In the subject line, I put, um, "Mrs. Reagan saved my life in 1983. This is not spam. Please read." And then in the body of the email, I tell her, I explain to her what I'm trying to find her and to thank her. And I also attach the New York Times news article. So I think it was like maybe 2 days later, the assistant emails me back, and she said, "Oh, I talked to Mrs. Reagan. I told Mrs. Reagan, and she was so happy to hear from you. And here is her home address. She wants you to write her a letter."
Wow.
So I go ahead and write the letter, just basically, a thank you letter for her, and I send it off, and I thought that was going to be it, but maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I get a letter back from Mrs. Reagan, and basically saying how happy she was to get back, or that I got in touch with her, and then I thought that was going to be it. So it was maybe a few months later. Mrs. Reagan's assistant emails me, and she says that the Reagan Library, they're opening up a new wing, and there's going to be a present or some big event there, and Mrs. Reagan had invited me to go there. So I go with my adopted mom. I take my adopted mom with me, and we fly to California. We arrive to the museum, and we get the whole tour of the museum. And Air Force One, when they retired the plane, they gave it to the Reagan Museum.
Uh,
So the actual plane I went on is in the museum.
seriously?
Yeah, so it's huge museum. It's very big.
Wow, that's so
So
dramatic.
yeah, so people can walk through Air Force One. And again, there's a small picture of me
Wow.
and me and Mrs. Reagan and President Reagan in the airplane as well. So
Wow.
yeah, it's really surreal. And
They
then
totally need to make this into a movie.
yeah, I mean that's that is a dream of mine. I don't know how if it can come to fruition,
Oh,
but it is a dream of
you
mine.
should try it. Everything you said is a movie script. Like
Yes.
perfect.
So get the tour of the whole museum. We go to Mrs. Reagan's office, which regular public cannot go in there, but they allowed me and my mom to go there. And again, in her office, there's a couple of pictures of me and the other Korean girl. So it was really like amazing that it was such a big. It seemed like such a big part of her life and of accomplishments, I think, in her life. Um, so we end up in front of the big picture that is on the wall of the museum of us. And
Wait,
so
wait. So both
yeah,
museums and her personal office had your names and pictures and everything.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. So
Wow.
so we end up in front of the big picture of the of us in the museum, and that is where Mrs. Reagan was going to come and meet me for the first time again. So we meet in front of the big picture. I get to hug her and, personally say thank you, to her face to face. And during that time, the media is there. It's a good story. So, there's a few newspapers and other media outlets there. And because of the media, my Korean aunt saw the news of me reuniting with Mrs. Reagan, and she was able to find me
Wow.
through my company website. So yeah. So anyway, so I I go back home to Seattle, after this meeting and dinner, and so I go back home, and when I go back to the office, I have a voicemail in my office, and the voicemail says, "Hi, my name is Eric. I'm your Korean cousin. My mom saw you on the news, and she wanted me to find you. I don't know if this is the right number, but please call me back."
He spoke English?
Yeah, so actually, it was my aunt that immigrated to America,
Oh.
but of course, I didn't know.
Okay.
Um, so anyway, so I call him, and then he's like, yeah, or his mom, my aunt, called my parents in Korea and my family. Hey, I found Kiru, I found Kiru, and uh, so yeah, so that happened. So November of 2007, I fly to Korea to meet my Korean family.
Wow.
And I stayed for about, I think it was about 3 weeks I stayed. So I, met my mother and my father, my uncles, my aunts, my older brother, all my cousins. So huge family here. And yeah, it was just, as you can imagine, roller coaster of emotions. Being able to reunite with my family, being able to reunite with Mrs. Reagan, and also Mrs. Hodges. It was her 90th birthday, and she was having a big birthday party, and some of the families that she helped, the kids that she helped, was throwing a birthday dinner for her. So I reunited with Mrs. Hodges also.
So she was visiting Korea?
Uh, at that time, yeah, she was visiting Korea.
Wow.
Yeah, just for her, just to meet the parents and the kids that she helped.
So providential, and you were also there.
Yes. So
Wow.
so I reunited with Mrs. Hodges, and then actually before I go to reunite with Mrs. Reagan, I'm telling one of my I'm talking to one of my clients, my insurance clients, and before I never talked about my history or my past to really anybody. I told a little bit to like my really close friends, but I never really talked about it. So especially to like people I'm not close to. But anyway, so I'm telling this client, we're a close, business relationship, and we got to become a little close. But so I'm telling him about my story. And I think it's because I was really excited to meet Mrs. Reagan again. So I was telling him, and he's like, "Oh, that's weird. I have a good friend that used to be involved with the organization that helped kids with heart problems. Let me ask her if she knows anything." So after he asked her, he tells me that she used to be the past president of Gift of Life in New York.
Oh.
So her name is Gail. So she calls the founder of Gift of Life and says, "Hey, guess who I found?" So
Wow.
yeah, so after I come back from Korea, I fly to New York to reunite with Gift of Life organization.
Wow.
And yeah, so all of these coincidences, miraculous coincidences, I feel, I don't know if it's coincidence or destiny, whatever you call it. It's really, every time I think about it, it's just amazing.
It sounds like it was meant to be.
Exactly,
It was
exactly.
almost designed to happen that way. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's exactly how I feel. So I fly to New York. I reunite with the founder of the organization and the new CEO. And I stay for, I think it was about a week or week and a half. And that is when I learned about what they do and, how they work and the crisis of children around the world born with heart disease. It is the number one congenital disease, meaning born with, is heart disease. And about 1.3 million children are born every year needing heart surgery or heart care. And 93% of those kids are born in a country that cannot do the surgeries. Just like Korea, when I was a baby, the doctors could not do the surgeries. Um, but now Korea has some of the best doctors in the world, heart surgeons in the world, because they got the training and the education. But yeah, so I learned about that, and I truly felt that I needed to do something to help these other kids. I felt like it was, I don't know, God's calling and for my life to give back and help these other children. So I decided to quit my career in the insurance industry, and I worked for Gift of Life in New York for 1 year full time. This was maybe 2009, around 2009. And then after that, I decided to move back to Korea. And this, it was a big, I don't know, it was a big step, I think,
Yeah, it's a
to
really big
move
step.
to a foreign country,
Yeah,
for
exactly.
me.
Yeah.
But, and there's two reasons. One, I wanted to spend the time that I had missed with my biological family. I wanted to try to build a relationship with them. Second, I wanted to learn about my roots and my culture. I am Korean. I knew nothing about Korea before I came to Korea. I knew nothing about the culture, didn't know the language, didn't know anything. And the funny thing is, even before I come back to Korea the first time, I was so ignorant. I thought South Korea was dangerous because it was so close to North Korea. and and even my adopted parents, my mom's like, "Are you sure it's safe over there for you to go?" So that's how ignorant we were about South Korea.
Wow.
So, anyways, yeah. Um, so I decided to move here, and from the time that I reunited with Gift of Life in New York, I have been working with them and being involved with them. I made meetings with the Korean hospitals here to work with the NGO, and so I have brought several children to some hospitals here in Korea. Yonsei Severance was the first child that I brought from Uganda, and Gilbyongwon, Injae yeah, for now, those hospitals. So, during the time that I reunited with them till now, I've been voluntarily working with them, helping them. And 2 years ago, I started Gift of Life Korea. And the reason being is I wanted to fundraise and get donations in Korea. Um, all of the funding and donations were coming from the US, the headquarters in New York. But I felt like I should be doing that also in Korea, from getting donations from Korean companies or individuals, doing whatever we can to get the donation so we can pay for some of these surgeries. So now officially, I am the president of Gift of Life International Korea.
Wow.
We have gotten approved by the Korean government here, got our license, so we can officially, give, donation receipts after we get donations. So, with the donations, we pay for the surgeries, we pay for traveling expenses for the kid if we send them to a different country, um, passports, visas, and so we do two different we have two different ways of helping these kids. One is individually, one or one by one, two by two. We take the children from the developing country to a developed country, one of our partnered hospitals around the world, and they get the heart surgeries at the hospitals, and then they go back to their home. That is one way. The second way, and the most effective way, is to train and teach the doctors in the developing country.
Wow.
So we do teaching and surgical missions where we send a team of doctors and nurses and the needed team to the developing country hospital, and they stay for about maybe 1 to 2 weeks, and they operate on 10 to 20 children, and at the same time teaching their doctors how to do it.
Oh.
But this costs a lot of money. And one thing I left out is Rotary. I don't know if you know Rotary International. They're a big NGO, worldwide NGO. We have a big history with them. Actually, the Rotary Club in New York was the one who started the Gift of Life program,
Oh.
and so we get a lot of grants from Rotary International.
Oh.
So a lot of the funding does come from Rotary also.
Oh.
And there are Gift of Life programs throughout Rotary around the world.
Oh.
Yes, so
So
like
is Gift of Life International part of Rotary, or has it
no, so Gift of Life International is totally separate,
now?
but it's yes now.
But at one point it was part of it.
Yes, at one point it is part of it, and we still get a lot of matching grants from Rotary,
I
but
see.
we are a separate NGO.
I see.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I just feel like I feel so blessed and lucky, and I feel that I can use my personal story to reach a lot of people or touch a lot of people, hopefully. Um, so yeah, I live. Oh yeah, so I've been here in Korea now for 12 years, and it's crazy how time flies.
Yeah.
I got married 5 years ago. I have a 4-year-old son, and especially after my son was born, I think it really I really understood to be a parent. And sometimes I think about, oh, what if my son had a heart problem, needed heart surgery, but I lived in a country that cannot do the surgery.
Yeah.
And if I was very poor, I couldn't afford it. What can you do? And I think, as we say in Gift of Life, I think kids are the common denominator around the world.
Mm.
I think no matter where you're from, what religion you have, whether you're poor or rich,
Mm.
the love from a parent to their kid, I
Yeah.
think is the same
Wow.
all over the world. So, we don't care about where these kids are from, what religion they have. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We will, we Gift of Life has, from 1975 when it started till now, they have saved about over 44,000 kids.
Wow.
But when you think about it, and maybe one year we save about 6,000. We do 6,000 surgeries per year, but it's such a small drop in the bucket
Yeah.
compared to 1.3 million.
Yeah.
So we still have a long ways to go, and there's other NGOs that are doing similar work as us.
Yeah.
But it's still so many kids, that don't get reached.
Yeah.
So it's really sad, and so yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to do my part in this world to give back, and yeah. So
Wow. It was just so amazing that everything that you said doesn't sound real.
Yeah.
It sounds like somebody made up the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It sounds
yes.
so perfectly symmetrical almost that
Full circle.
yeah,
It came full circle.
it's just so amazing. Like
Mm,
I feel like you are born for this to do this work. You know what I mean?
thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna share real quick some pictures. So this is me. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is me and Mrs. Reagan and the other current girl.
Do you know where she is?
Actually, she was adopted by the same family, so I grew up with her. So
That's your
she's my
sister?
sister. Yeah, she's my sister.
Wow, really?
Yeah, but
Wow.
yeah. Anyway, yeah, we grew up
Okay,
together.
okay.
Uh, this was on Air Force One. This picture.
Wow.
This is the picture in the library in the Reagan Museum.
Oh.
And as you can see here, I'm with Mrs. Reagan, and yeah, we're in front of the picture.
Oh.
Mm,
Oh, that's you?
yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah, this is me,
Okay.
Mrs. Reagan, and then this is the picture in the huge picture that covers the whole wall.
Wow.
Yeah, another picture of us, Mrs. Reagan. Uh, here is here we are. I think we're. I don't know if yeah, we're not boarding Air Force One. I think we're getting off Air Force One here
Oh, okay.
in the States.
Wow.
We're boarding Air Force One here in Korea.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah, so we went there in November, so I think these little before Christmas is when I think we came back to Korea. But Mrs. Reagan, she bought Christmas gifts for us, and I don't know if you know, but back then, uh, yeah, this is Cabbage Patch Dolls was like the thing, like the Christmas gift that every kid wanted. These
Oh,
aren't Cabbage Patch Dolls, but she did give us Cabbage Patch Dolls.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You just typed your name. This is what you see.
Yeah, so I typed in Reagan and Lee Kil Woo,
You don't
which is my.
even need a PowerPoint slide.
Right.
That's what's crazy about this thing.
Yeah, so yeah, it's my story. So yeah, I mean, if I can, I don't. So do Korean people see this, or do American people see this, or
Both.
both? Okay.
Yeah.
Can I, or can you put like our website?
Sure, sure, yeah.
Is it okay?
In the description part.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people can go there. If they want, they can do like monthly donation,
Sure,
or
sure, sure.
automatic, Junggi Huan, or
Okay.
the automatic donation.
Okay.
And I'll give you both websites, our headquarters website and the
Uh-huh.
Korean website.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you so much.
thank
It
you
was
for having me.
it was life changing actually. Interview itself. Like I was just so blown away by about everything that you said. It was
Thank
just
you,
it's such a beautiful story, and you're just doing a beautiful work.
thank you, and also thank you because yeah, for the money that you guys donated.
Wow.
So we're bringing a 4-year old 4-year old from Malawi to
Yeah.
Yonsei Severance,
Okay.
hopefully Yonsei, and the money you guys donated through your church, we'll be
Yeah.
using that for some of the transportation, the airplane tickets for
Okay.
child and one parent. We always bring one parent with the child.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to take a minute and thank you also
Sure.
for that. Yes.
I think it also changed my life because I never cared about these kind
Hmm.
of things, but it was leap of faith, and then
Hmm.
just whole fundraising was kind of dramatic, and
Hmm.
just hearing your story just is reviving my body cells, like every single one of them. I'm so inspired right now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll keep in touch, and I would like to continue to support your work.
Thank you so much, JR.
Thank you. I'll do my job to promote.
Okay.
Thank you, Brett.
All right. Have a good one.
Yep.
We'll
Have a
talk to you
nice day.
soon.
Yep. Bye bye.
Bye.